Well, hi everyone. Each week we're looking at a passage from the Old Testament that points us to Jesus. And I'm basing this on a series called Pointers to Christ from Gospel and Life. And today we're going to look at Genesis chapter 32. I'm going to read for you verses 24 to 30. It reads, "So Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. When the man saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip, so that his hip was wrenched as he wrestled with the man. Then the man said, 'Let me go, for it is daybreak.' But Jacob replied, 'I will not let you go unless you bless me.' The man asked him, 'What is your name?' 'Jacob,' he answered. Then the man said, 'Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome.' Jacob said, 'Please tell me your name.' But he replied, 'Why do you ask my name?' Then he blessed him there. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, 'It is because I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared.'" Okay, this is a very strange account of a human being having an encounter with God. And yet it shows us how we can have a personal encounter with the living God. So how do we encounter God? First, an encounter with God is personal. Jacob meets God. In verse 24, it says that Jacob was alone. It was not until Jacob was alone that he met God. Many people experience religion through their family or a church, but they never meet God personally for themselves. You have to be able to meet God alone. Second, an encounter with God is wrestling. If you encounter God in reality, it'll be a wrestling match, not a seminar or a walk in the park. When we have a personal relationship with God, that becomes the most important thing in your life, more than anything else. And that starts to change everything. To wrestle means that God can oppose you. God can contradict you and disagree with you. And that's difficult. So why did God wrestle with him? Why did God hurt him? So often we need to feel the pain before we can experience the joy. Think about it. How often do our kids need to learn the hard way to truly know? How often do we have to learn the hard way to truly learn? It's how we become wise. Even if we live our lives faithfully, God can still have us experience pain. Third, an encounter with God is winning through losing. Remember, this is a wrestling match, so who won? We see what appears to be a contradiction. It says he could not overpower him and then says, "Let me go." It seems like God is not more powerful than Jacob. But then he merely touched his hip and dislocated it. So it shows that God is enormously strong, that God was withholding his own strength so that he didn't destroy Jacob. I do this when I wrestle with my young kids. I withhold using my full strength. So who won? God says, you won. You have struggled with God and have overcome. Yet God walks away unharmed and Jacob is limping, permanently disabled. The answer is both Jacob and God won. And they won through losing. And that's the gospel. You see, at first Jacob was trying to win through his own strength, but he couldn't. The Lord is showing Jacob that it's God that he's been struggling with his whole life. Jacob deceived and manipulated to try to control his own life. How many of us deep down want to control our own life? God is showing Jacob that the real blessing is standing right in front of him. The blessing you're looking for, it's not getting your own way. The true blessing is God himself. Jacob had to hold on to God in weakness. He is in pain. Have you ever had a part of your body dislocated? I have. I've had a dislocated finger and shoulder, and both were incredibly painful. Jacob is holding on to God in pain. Finally, Jacob saw God face to face, and yet his life was spared. Jacob won through weakness. God also won through weakness. God had to restrain his strength, power, and glory. So why was Jacob given grace instead of judgment? You see, Jesus restrained his power and glory. And Jesus was struck down, not just the hip, but his whole body. Isaiah 53:4 says, "Surely he took up our pain and bore our suffering, yet we considered him punished by God, stricken by him and afflicted." Jesus was struck by God so we can see God and have our life spared. Jesus was stricken in our place for us so that we could receive God's blessing.